So, good morning, everyone. Mark Goldstein, appearing on your screen is Steve Peters. He's not able to moderate and lead this meeting this morning, though he may join us in a little bit. Just for your information, Steve did have some heart distress yesterday, some pains. It's definitely not a heart attack. They know that much, and he's undergoing a little bit more testing, expecting to be sent home this morning. He may yet join us before this call is over, and I don't know much more about it other than I've probably talked to him 8 times since yesterday evening, and now he's a mother hen and wanted to make sure you were all taken care of in his absence. I know last meeting Karen Ziegler and I talked about not even taking off his July holiday period. So best, of course, to Steve. And he actually hopes to sign on to the meeting. I'm not sure, since I'm signed on as him, whether he can or use an alternate sign-in somehow, but we may yet see him on the call before we're done. So with that, I'm going to share a screen and kick us off. So as usual, really do want to thank our sponsors. They've let us hire Steve on a proper basis and remunerate him some for his good work. Lets us spend some money on the EBB announcements and publication, and hopefully on some projects and initiatives as we go forward. So big thanks to Care First, who's been the biggest of those sponsors, but you're all greatly appreciated. So Care First, United Way, Valley of the Sun, the Satellite Broadcasting and Communications Association, and Khajiit. Thank you all so very much. And then Jeff, I saw in the chat that Sophia Mayberry's only good till 8:20. Well, we have time. Let's start, Jeff, as we normally would, with your update, if you would.
Sure. Thanks, Mark. I'm going to keep this short because I'm really anxious to hear about the final mile and give Sophia a chance to talk about some of the cool stuff they're doing at ADE right now. As I mentioned last week, we are working with KPMG on our middle mile, and quite frankly, an update of our state plan around those parameters, just in terms of making sure that we have a process and a structure in place. We're working with Derek and the folks over at Sun Quarter as well. Had a chance to talk to a lot of our county level people. So a lot going on there, quite a bit you'll hear about later. The NTIA grant, thank you for everybody who submitted an expression of interest. We have some really cool stuff. It's going to be hard to narrow this one down. We definitely want to make sure that we pick something that we know will win and get money back to the state that doesn't preclude others from applying, just to be clear. Our state grant is hung up in the legislature. I don't know if you guys have been following that circus, but my understanding is they're talking now about what they call a skinny budget, which is a way basically to constitutionally get through the session and then have a special session to work on the other stuff. I was in a meeting on Friday with Ben Blink from the governor's office over at DACA at almost 4 o'clock in the afternoon, and his phone buzzes, and he looked like he'd gotten the call that his wife was having a baby or something and get running out of there. So there's a lot going on with that. Hopefully they'll get that done here in the near future, and our broadband grant in particular is kind of hanging until they finish that work. Our hope was to get this thing out the first week of July, but if they push the budget into July, that could delay things. So I want to make sure everybody knew that. Lastly, I'm going to be in Yuma this week because it's just not hot enough here in Phoenix. I need to really get out and get some sun and warm myself up on Wednesday. So I'm going to be out of pocket on Wednesday, but other than that, I'll be available all week and look forward to speaking with any interesting stuff that we've got going on. Thanks.
And Jeff, I know with the hopefully much larger fund and the return after a missed year cycle. You'll probably refine and adjust the rules and all. I know you've talked about enabling larger grants. Any other thoughts to share about the new rules? I know far from set yet, but
a lot of this is being dictated. The good news is we're getting a little bit of cover from the federal government in terms of making the rules work a little bit better for us. As you know, Mark, I think 25.3 is a bit of a joke. I think we need to get way beyond that. And where I think we're getting a little bit of clearance on that. So, in terms of what's required to make a community eligible, I'm hoping we can loosen that up a bit. The size of the grant is another one. I believe that if you have a good carrier or a good county, for example, that has projects in 2 different places, I don't believe that should be precluding them. But again, these are all things that we have to work through.
right.
We want to make sure that we get these out to the very best areas and that we spread this around the state in such a way that everybody knows that we're the state of Arizona and not just one particular area.
Anyone else have questions or comments for Jeff?
Yes, I do. Jeff, I get lost with grants and names. And is there a place, when you talk about grants, are you talking about the American Rescue Plan?
No, well, that is part of it. In fact, Cindy, I can send you a link. NTI put out a really good list last week. We're talking about a rural broadband development grant. That was our state grant.
Okay.
And that's completely separate from the federal grant. What's important to understand with that is that we don't put as many restrictions on that. So for example, if you take down a federal grant from the USDA, it's difficult to get, for example, the EDA to grant you money in the same area, even if it's for a different project. Our state grant gives us some flexibility, so we can actually follow up federal grants. We can follow up, Mylan is and the ADE folks have built some great middle mile infrastructure throughout the state in the last, say, 3-4 years. We want to build on that. And so our state grant is sort of our Swiss Army knife of grants. It allows us to fill in the gaps where a lot of the federal grants just can't go for a variety of reasons.
And there were 2 categories. There were community planning grants. I think you gave out 4 at $50,000. And then there were project infrastructure grants. I expect we'll still have that kind of split.
Correct. And that's really, the planning grants were great because we were able to come up, Coconino County in particular came up with a really interesting project based on that. And so they're ready for federal grants. So I think that both benefit the state, although I will tell you that, my bias is towards let's get some of these projects done. However, the amount of money they're talking about, we should be able to do both.
Right, and I'm just seeing different places across the country where they're starting to spell out what states and communities are getting from the ARPA. And so I'm wondering how I can tap into lists like that, if that's posted anywhere on a website.
There was just I think it was NTIA who released their second edition of all the federal grant opportunities. Nothing, and it's like 60 pages or something. It's a PDF. Someone will get the link in the chat while we're at it.
And that's for Arizona?
No, these are all the federal grant opportunities.
Right, that's what I'm trying to find out is what's coming to Arizona.
And I'm sorry, go ahead, Mark. Now, I was just going to mention that all the most of the cities and counties are receiving large blocks of funding also. I will tell you, I've spoken with Yavapai County, Yuma County, a lot at the county level in particular. City of Phoenix got a lot of money, obviously. Some of the cities did as well. So, what I'm asking them to do is to set aside a portion of that money for match for federal funds and other things. Because again, many of the federal grants, or some of the federal grants, I should say, require matching funds of, say, 20%. So it's important that they have that money on hand because they have a lot of discretion in how they spend that money. I was surprised, quite frankly, how much money they were getting. Right. So having a little bit set aside for broadband is not an unreasonable ask.
But it's going to the municipalities or the agency, so it's not public. I mean,
the last pandemic, the most recent $1.9 billion pandemic relief package is sending, I believe, $7.2 billion to the state of Arizona, which falls into dozens and dozens of buckets. There was a 8-page JLBC, Joint Legislative Budget Committee, report that John Kelly posted maybe 5-6 weeks ago that kind of detailed by state department and by generally the municipalities how that money would be split, but doesn't really talk in there about broadband allocations. As Jeff says, the money will be dispersed to agencies, to cities, and they will have a lot of discretion in whether they spend some or much of that on broadband. So there's not likely to be a readily available consolidated list of all the opportunities, but more of a moving target, Cindy, that we will track here, and we will help identify, you know, Jeff or someone will come back and say, well, the city of Tucson is looking at doing this, or, you know, the state of Arizona, besides the money to commerce for broadband grants under their program, is also interested in another highway segment or this or that. It's going to be a pretty kind of fractured piecemeal story that will be, you know, this may be the best place in the state to get that news, though.
Well, and
track
we're the best situated to be able to inform how decisions are made, because we are in touch with
Yes.
all the need, and that's what scares me. It feels very closed and hidden, and like how do we give input when the decisions start happening? That's what happens when you're behind the game. You don't spend it with the intent that you would if you were informed.
Right.
So I'm just
Great point. But again, this is the table that we come around. I mean,
Exactly.
there are other efforts happening in,
Right.
in some good places.
Exactly.
You know, and some specific areas, K through 12 or the universities or telehealth, have their own more centric groups than the broader game. But
Yep.
this is going to be a good place to watch that story unfold.
Right. Okay. Thank you.
Steve, could you clarify something for me? I heard you say planning grants, which perked my earballs up. You and I have talked before about the inclination to spend a ton of money on planning, particularly at the county and town level. And I probably just wasn't paying attention. How common are these planning grants, and are municipalities and counties taking advantage of that opportunity?
Well, you know, they did last time. I mean, we had 4 of them, and they all came up with plans, some better than others. And you know, they're using these to apply for federal grants, and you know, theoretically our state grant. And there are federal programs. The EDA has a program where they will lend money, or excuse me, they will grant money for planning grants. So personal belief is there's just a very limited window here. I think that this wave of funding is going to come washing over the state over the next, say, 18 months, and we have to take advantage of as much infrastructure as we can. You know, that being said, there are some areas that really do need to get a plan together, and you know, we'll certainly support that as well.
2 years ago, when there
Is
was
about
$3 million,
18 months?
4 $50,000 planning grants were given out. This year, we're hoping Jeff is high on a continuum between $10 and $100 million, yet to be determined. But certainly, I would expect the number of planning grants, maybe the amount available, will be scaled up a bit within that larger body, Wes. But first, we have to see how much money is going to flow to the grant program. Then Jeff and his team will set up new rules. But 4 last time could well be a dozen planning grants. I don't know. I did just putting that out there. Could be more than 4 this time.
Well, and I've said time and again, governmental bodies, whether they're municipalities or counties, who may feel uncertain about some last mile solutions, will be inclined to hire grants that will end up telling them what we already know. And I have 2 concerns about that. One is it stretches out the time, but Jeff has said 18 months, and we can get a lot done in 18 months. I'm always thinking about 18 days instead of 18 months. And the other thing, my concern is the amount of money spent on planning for to reach conclusions that are readily available based on the things this group and others have done will not seriously diminish the amount of, I'll call it, grant principal that's left to actually do projects. That's it. I just never, I had never paid attention, Jeff, about the planning grant process. Thanks for clearing that up.
Yeah, I mean, Wes, the percentage, of $3 million, $200,000, excuse me, went to planning. So it was a very small percentage, and I would imagine it'd be even smaller this time around. And I just think there's some situations where some of these municipalities and some of these areas are just having a tough time. I will tell you, there's other organizations. I look at like what Steven's doing with SEGO down in southeastern Arizona that, he's doing some really innovative stuff. And, I'd love to see groups like that get funded. We have some flexibility there because he's bringing kind of a different look to this whole thing. And, I look at what Matt Fowler, the CIO, did up in Coconino County. I thought was really good. And I know Derek and I have both met with Matt, and we've had discussions with them. And that planning grant we understand the lay of the land a lot better. Again, I'm not saying that that's by any means what we need to do for everybody, but there are situations where I think further study is warranted. But I would agree with you 100%, Wes. There are some great projects that are shovel ready that we need to get rolling on here pretty quick. In partnership with a lot of these other programs that are out there, both federal and and education. So when I say 18 months, I think that the amount of money, I don't think we're going to see this kind of money coming around in the state budget in future years. I think that this is an opportunity to get something done here quickly, right. And then it'll be gone. I mean, we're going to have potentially a different Congress in a couple of years. Priorities change, things happen. So right now we've got the spotlight, and we're taking advantage of what we can take advantage of and getting some stuff done.
Well, as a representative of the Final Mile Project, I want to remind everybody that the Final Mile Project isn't a project so much as a concept, and we're agnostic about how that last mile connection gets made. I mean, we have our concept, but I don't care if somebody figures out that 2 tin cans and a string are going to be effective. So we're agnostic about how it gets done, but we're really, really engaged in the notion that it gets done.
Great. Sorry, go ahead. Someone else.
Yeah, Jeff, this is Karen. I just have a quick question. Do you have an anticipated timeline for when you guys are going to pick a project for the NTIA grant?
That's tough. I'll be honest with you, Karen, we got a lot more folks applying than I ever, probably 3 times as many people applied as I expected. So it's going to take a little bit of time to sort through that. Realistically, what's today? The 21st? Yeah. Probably after the 4th of July holiday. I think that would probably be realistic.
That's a good target. Thank you.
Yeah.
Okay. Let's go back a second and do introductions of new people. John Kelly direct messages me and reminded me Steve would normally have done that by now. So I know at least 2 people new. Ask you to unmute and just say hello, tell us who you are and who you're with. Roshna Voss and Andrew Metcalf. First, Roshna, if you would, then we'll see if anyone else new is there.
Hi, I'm Rich Navas. I work with Microsoft, specifically Microsoft Airband. My focus is on expanding broadband connectivity and digital inclusion programming for rural and tribal communities.
And where are you based?
I'm currently based in Albuquerque, but in 4 weeks, I'll have to be based out of DC. So,
okay.
Thank you. I have a broadband partner in Arizona Native Network. And Native Network is represented today by Andy Metcalf, who's on the call.
Andrew, chime in also if you would.
Morning, everyone. I'm Andy Metcalf, CEO of Native Network, and we are focused and aligned very well with Microsoft in the tribal space in the United States, as well as rural communities. So serving both of those verticals. So being able to work with Microsoft has been very good for us. We've been able to connect and build out multiple tribes, primarily in the Northwest. We're expanding. We built out the Pasco Yaqui tribe there in Tucson recently, very successfully, and we've integrated our national network down through Phoenix and Tucson. So we're excited to be part of the Arizona solution, and hoping to eventually get to know all of you folks.
If you both put your contact info, and Andrew, maybe a link to Native Networks in the chat.
Perfect, we'll do it.
We capture the chat and distribute it. Anyone else new on the call? I can't see the whole list at the moment, but if there is anyone new or long time absent and coming back, please chime in at this moment.
Who is Albert Velarde? Is that someone, is that a different person than we normally had? I don't know who that name is.
I don't recognize it either. Albert, you want to say hello?
Good morning. I was on the call last week. I am a strategic account manager for Smith Bagley Incorporated. Ian Hathcock is my supervisor.
Thank you. Anyone else? Okay, so I'm going to juggle. A couple of people have texted they have to drop early. Derek Masseth, looks like you're the first one that has to drop if you have a minute left.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
Thanks, Mark. Yeah, I put probably the two most pertinent updates I have for today. I put them in chat. So two upcoming events. One, the central or the center event in the Lighting Up the Future roundtables is today at 4 o'clock, the adoption gap. I put a link to the registration page in there. And then ASU, in partnership with Common Sense Media, is hosting a Tech for Tomorrow Digital Equity Town Hall on July 8th from 10 to noon. Again, the registration page is in the chat. A couple of exciting events coming up, and our digital equity work at the Sun Corridor, whether it's in Phoenix or Page or Navajo or Tohono O'odham, it just continues to progress, right, and grow for that matter. And the highways project, the I-17 and I-19, got good news about funding last week, and are kind of re-energizing our efforts and moving forward. So
and that good
that's
news,
the high-level stuff.
That good news was still for the segment from Flagstaff to New Mexico, or is there any action on the Flagstaff to California leg?
That's caught up in the same kind of legislative discussion that Jeff alluded to earlier, as well as I'll just say that the commitment now is the I-17 from Scottsdale to Flagstaff, and the I-19 from Tucson to Nogales. And then the strategic planning work that we're doing with KPMG, along with the budgeting kind of work that we're doing with the legislature, is going to help to inform what segments of highway the state should focus on.
Okay.
Kind of after we complete those segments. So it's not to say we're not committed to the 40. It's just to say, if these planning efforts were to, reveal that an alternative route is more strategic for the state to build, we want to reserve the right to kind of shift the focus. So that planning effort with KPMG and the Commerce Authority is pretty key, pretty pivotal.
And that's great. And Jeff,
yeah.
Is Jeff or Derek, now that they're on board, I remember the original RFP was for a 13-week span of time to complete. So is there now a specific date now that they're under contract that they're expected to submit the report?
We're talking about
I'll let Jeff-
KPMG.
Yeah,
You know, we're pressing them really hard to get something out in about 90 days. And the reason for that is there's just too much federal money going on right now, and we need to bring some structure to that. You know what, I was going to mention too, Derek, just, I know this is all brand new, so this is probably too soon, but I think Mark, you know, pass this on to Steve. I think it'd be great if Derek and then Stephen up at NAU kind of gave an overview, kind of a results briefing regarding some of their deployments. You know, I think the
Okay.
page thing, I've been on calls for that. That's really interesting. And I know they've done some stuff in Metro Phoenix just to say, hey, this is what we've learned thus far, because I know that technology, not necessarily just, you know, millimeter wave, but some of that stuff is getting pitched to me quite a bit. And I'd love to kind of get the, you know, the positives and the negatives that y'all have seen thus far.
Happy to.
good. Now I'm going to switch to Sophia Mayberry and anyone else from the, thank you, Derek.
You bet. I have to drop.
From
Thanks all.
Department of Ed, because she has to drop off. I know we'll hear a bit more from Mylan in our presentation, but Sophia, if you want to lead off on Department of Education and bring anyone else in on that conversation. Thank you.
Sure, I will do kind of the high level updates and let Mylan speak to anything more specific, but we are planning in the next week or two to put out another push to schools about the Emergency Connectivity Fund. Mylan and I are just kind of in the initial steps of getting some information to our communications department to get another push out to schools as we learn more information, as more webinars go out and things like that, and we approach the window of it opening. We are preparing another push to schools to help get them ready. As I've said before, we created a survey and some other materials that we're working on for them. And all of this information will also live on our new tech page that once it's done, I will make sure I present to this group. But that is the main update from the department this week. I will also put the link to our ongoing list of federal projects that we've used our funding for.
Excellent.
I'll put that in the chat as well.
Thank you. Anyone else have Department of Education updates or related updates to add at this point?
Just wondering when the report is coming out, Sophia? From
Right now, we're looking at the beginning of July.
Okay, great.
I will make sure that's that I email Steve about that. It gets sent out to everybody and I present at this group when it's all ready to go.
Perfect, thank you.
That's the ADE Technology Task Force report in the beginning of July, right?
Yes, and if anyone in this group for any reason feels that they need to see or wants one of the pieces before we do the official launch and you have a specific reason, you can of course email me anytime. What we created is for all of us to move forward, but we're just trying to get our ducks in a row on our end to launch this new tech page before we announce everything. We want to announce it all together.
Great, perfect.
Excellent. Okay, let's go to libraries. I'm Mala and Holly, are you online?
Steve, I'm not seeing Mala online, and she had texted late last night and said she might not be able to be with us this morning. So really our report is very similar to what Sophia was saying, only for libraries. That last week we were really getting the word out to the libraries about the Emergency Connectivity Fund program for schools and libraries, and Mala forwarded the information about the USAC webinars that were last week, and then there's another one that's coming up on June the 23rd at 3 p.m. And then of course she's offering to help the libraries to apply if they're interested and to understand all of the rules and regulations related to this money. That's all I have.
Any questions or comments, either on library or Department of Ed from anyone, please?
Hey, Holly, this is Mylan Eaton from Department of Ed. Do you know if you guys will be attempting to apply for any ECF funds to extend the library connection and build any infrastructure around any remote libraries?
You mean would the state library be applying?
Well, will any of your libraries, not state library, but any of your 200 or so libraries out there that are in rural Arizona, will they be applying for ECF funds to build out infrastructure to extend their networks?
You know, honestly, I have not heard of any plans yet. My focus recently has been mainly on the ARPA grants that we're putting out to the libraries. And Mala might have that information, but I don't. I have not heard of plans.
Okay, I'll yell at Mala. Thank you.
Okay, thanks.
Okay, just sending off a quick email to someone trying to get on the meeting. And let me figure, Leah Marquet Peterson, our commission chair, are you on this morning?
Hi, Mark. Yes, I'm here. Good
There you
morning,
are.
everybody. And so I am the chair of the Arizona Corporation Commission. We have limited jurisdiction in telecom, but I really have enjoyed participating in the stakeholder group. No real update other than we continue to approve eligible telecommunication carriers every month. A lot of folks come into the state to engage with many of these grants and opportunities you're talking about. And we're still work in progress on the Arizona Universal Service Fund, as well as on some of the actually investigation work that we're doing right now on Frontier. So I'll keep you up to speed on that, but that's it for me this morning. Thanks, Mark.
Thank you. And the Frontier relates to their bankruptcy in particular?
No, good question. That's certainly top of mind also, but it's related to 911 service. We regulate that throughout the state, and they've had a number of outages and issues. So we're investigating this because it's many more than we thought had occurred. So we've worked closely with ADOA to gather information from them, as well as information our utilities division has received. So just checking things out, making sure we're all safe.
Thanks for the additional detail. My mind jumped to maybe, performance issues in other areas from their bankruptcy, but glad to have the clarification. Thank you.
Sure.
Any questions for Chairwoman Marquet Peterson? Okay, well, we did schedule an informational update for today with Wes Brownfield. He's Executive Director of the Arizona Rural Schools Association. They have their Final Mile program, and Mylan is going to partner with him in updating us all on that. And I'm going to yield the floor and the talking stick to the Wes and Mylan show. Go ahead, guys.
My goodness, Mylan, we're now officially a show. Holy mackerel. That is actually stating the obvious. I'll be brief. For you, those of you who don't know me, my name is Wes Brownfield. And as Steve Peters, Robot, just told you, I'm the Executive Director of Arizona Rural Schools, and I'm a consortium member for the Final Mile project. Mylan has the best technical update. What I will say is we have finally, well, first of all, I'll say, remind everyone, the Final Mile is a concept. It's not a thing. The Final Mile, when we first got into this, I was thinking, and I first made my phone call to Mylan, just delivering internet to the families of our students who either can't afford it or don't have it, or have it, but it's not very effective. Since then, the scope of my understanding has broadened enormously. Mylan has even taught me what a backfill is, and it has nothing to do with a backhoe. So we set about trying to find projects where we could prove the concept that Mylan has thought out and developed, which is essentially a CBRS solution to bring broadband into homes. We have expanded the possibility, I realize the expanded possibility of this as an amazing economic development opportunity for homes that can receive those signals. It's also an economic development, not just homes, businesses who can receive those signals, and for internet service providers who now do not have to worry about capitalizing a tower, transmitter, and receivers, which means they can afford to provide both educational content, throttled educational content, and general commodity internet products to families. Right now, we have 6 projects up and running, thanks to the generosity of the Department of Ed. We have money to fund those 6. We have actually released the first batch, our first batch of RFPs. And the next real proof of this concept will be when we receive bids based on those RFPs. And that will help us define what is possible. And essentially the concept we work with is taking that broadband superhighway that comes into almost every school in the state, thanks to Andy Tobin and Mylon Eaton, and broadcasting that from the school site on a tower, like I said, with the CBRS signal, and the homes will all have receivers. Part of the day, that signal will be educational content, which will be controlled by the school district. And then at a certain point in the day, thanks to our friends at Khajiit, that signal will open up to general commodity internet services. For the ISPs who are successful, they will also have the capacity to sell their product at a reasonable rate. Mylon has made sure that this rate needs to be reasonable, and there is no reason for it not to be, because we've built the tower, installed the transmitters, have the receivers for the kids. The receiver issue is an issue between the ISP and other homes who may be, our businesses who may be interested in that. And then at a certain point in the day, even our families of our initial homes for our students open up. So right now where we are is we're waiting to see what we learn from the bids. That's pretty much where we are right now. I'm walking around the house with both of my fingers crossed, hoping to learn a great deal when we get those bids. That's about it.
When are your RFP responses due? Are all 5 the same, or are they staggered somehow?
Go ahead, Mylon.
Can't hear you,
You're
Mylon.
muted, bro.
I'm glad you didn't hear that word. All 5 are posted. I posted a link in the chat. They're all due on the same day, July 23rd. They're all due at the Maricopa County School Superintendent's office. So, make it easy in a central location for the vendors to drop off the bids. Wes mentioned, CBRS technology. That's a technology that's a very good possibility, probably the top of the list. But we also have a couple of fiber vendors that are inquiring about building fiber to the home in a couple of these areas. So you mean Chevelon Butte area, there's 7. So it may be more economical to actually build fiber to those 7 homes than actually put up a tower. So, and we're not dictating technology, we're dictating a service. So we want to provide that service at a good price for educational content. It needs to be $10 or less a month. And then if they want to, after we build that infrastructure, if they want to use that infrastructure we've built to provide commercial services, more power to them. We want the vendors to be able to stay in business and make money, but we want educational content at less than $10 a month. And that's the big focus. Every kid, our ECF program with the E-rate is going to allow every kid to have a device, a computing device at home. And with this program, we can give them affordable internet at home. So this is going to allow, another pandemic comes along or whatever, every child in Arizona should be able to sit at home with their very own computer, and for $10 a month, do a class on Zoom, just like we're doing right now. We have 48 participants. They can have a classroom of 48 kids interacting with their teacher. So that's our Final Mile project goal right there in a nutshell.
And hopefully, sorry, go ahead.
Hey, Henry.
When you say $10 a month, that's after ADE has paid for the capital costs of building the network? Is that the operational costs?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir, exactly. After we want to capitalize the install, all the hardware, the whole infrastructure, any towers, hardware cost, licensing, capitalize all that stuff so that the $10 a month is for basically maintenance and operations for the vendor.
But that will be a limited service if they want to, you know, use their device as a hotspot for the whole family and do all sorts of general purpose stuff. They may have to up from that $10 to pay a vendor who's going to provision over your network.
Exactly, Mark. So that $10 a month, and when I say educational internet, that is a SIPA filtered educational internet, which means you don't get streaming Netflix, you don't get Netflix, you don't get Facebook, you don't get all those things that people like to use. You get the things that you need for educational content. They need Google, they need email, they need to be able to do their research, to do their papers. They don't need Netflix for education. So it's going to be a SIPA filtered, and that's the reason Khajiit's so heavily involved with us. Khajiit is a partner, and the Final Mile project is paying for all the licensing separate from that $10 a month. So that all that's being paid for by Final Mile project. So we have that SIPA compliant filtered access, which we have on the hotspots the ADE has today. We have 200 of them out there, and I manage the compliance on those hotspots. So we have no, you know, some of the big things I see that we're blocking is Xbox 360. We blocked Netflix. We blocked Facebook. So all that stuff will be blocked for educational content, so they can actually do classwork.
Is YouTube open? I mean, a lot of educational content will point to a YouTube video to play.
Yes, Mark, there is a lot of YouTube content that is educational content. So it pretty much has to be. Although there's a lot of YouTube content that is not, but there is lots of teachers use YouTube for education.
Right. Thank you.
Good
Any
point.
questions for Wes and Mylan or comments?
Yeah, I'm a little unclear about the Khajiit role. Like you say, you're requiring it to all the access to be SIPA compliant, CBRS or fiber to the home or whatever is used. And then Khajiit is providing what exactly? Are they providing hotspots for other types of internet access beyond the educational, or I'm not sure how they play into this solution.
So Henry, if you take a look at one of the RFPs, there's a Khajiit section on there that explains it in detail, and you'll get it when you read that section, because it talks about how the traffic is directed to Khajiit. There are no Khajiit hotspots, but the traffic is directed to the Khajiit data center for the filtering.
Oh, I see. Okay.
You'll as soon as you see it, you'll completely get the concept.
Okay.
Non-technical people may look at it and like, why do you have all this crap in there? But Henry, you'll look at it and it's like, oh yeah, that makes perfect sense.
I see. Okay. Okay.
Something else I'd like to point out, Mark, if I may, the
Please.
ECF program, our window is opening June 29th for that $7.1 billion E-rate program. That's a one-time dump of money if we need to take advantage of it in Arizona. I've only have 2 school districts right now that we're going to be filing a Form 471 to try and extend the school's network into the community and build out infrastructure. So if you guys can help in any way, you know of a remote area that has no connectivity, then there's a school within 50 miles, yell at me. Because I've asked all the schools that if your community has no access, let me know, and I will fight the battle with you to get you access out there. It's not going to be easy. It's going to be a fight. We have to file paperwork, and then we're going to have to do some justifications. We've got to do work now in order to make that happen. So just keep it in mind. We can make it happen. Besides getting laptops and hotspots for school buses and bookmobiles and the services. So we can do more. We can do a lot more with that money. But
Yeah,
they have
that's 7.2 million. The libraries will put their loaners of devices and hotspots on steroids with that too, Mylan. So
right,
good point.
exactly, Mark.
That's
have-
a one-time opportunity that's now funded and available and underway.
Yeah,
Well,
Jeff.
and
you
I keep
unmuted.
hearing that program is very, very narrow and who can get it. So is it just underserved? What kind of metrics should we think about when thinking about approaching communities and school districts?
So that's a very good question, Jeff. Thank you. So the FCC rules say that if they are not served, then we can utilize these funds to provide services. They didn't, unfortunately, they left out the term broadband when they said not served. They just said not served. So, which means, and you heard me Friday, it means we're gonna have a fight because not served means no service. Well, we can get service anywhere with satellite. It's not good. We can't do this type of interaction with geosynchronous satellites. We can with low orbit, but not geosynchronous. Right. So we're going to have a bit of an argument and a bit of a fight if we're challenged by those providers. I think we can win. I think that I can pull up a Zoom call on a HughesNet satellite and show them that it does not work. So but like I said, it's going to be a fight. So if they have no service, we can get them services. And I know we have pockets in Arizona that have no service, not even bad service, but no service. So those people that have no service, we can fix it. But it's a very, very narrow window with narrow rules, with some government narrow-minded people we're going to have to deal with. And I'm willing to fight them, but we need to know who those people are, and they have to be willing to stand at least behind me during this fight.
And ARSA is willing to identify those communities that have no service. It is for us, it's a kind of a tough time of year because districts have so many other things on their mind, and a lot of them are so used to not having internet. It's like being in the middle of the drought. I'm not going to get a rainstorm tomorrow, and they're not going to get internet tomorrow. So we have to pop this opportunity up on their radar screen and demonstrate to them that this is obtainable. And it's doable because we got this fella named Mylan Eaton who will not shut up until he gets what he wants. So we have a real advantage there. And also part of my sense of urgency is we now have these proof of concept projects ready to go. And once we're successful and make an informed build out, I think that will help with Jeff's concern with communicating this as a viable option or as a suite of viable options to the people in the counties and municipalities who are under a ton of money and want to make informed decisions.
Mylan, I have a question really quickly.
Hi, yes.
You were talking about areas that just have no service or very poor service. I mean, so many of the schools, at least in Apache County, you have the core of the community, but then you have all these outlining areas of students that get bussed in from sometimes over an hour away. Is there a percentage that might be looked at, like 90% of the students in this school district get service, but 10% don't? I mean, are they looking at numbers like that? Because when you talk about the Final Mile project and how you isolated, 5 homes here and 55 homes there, is there something we should help the school districts understand that even if there's only 10% of the students in their school district who don't get connectivity, they could still apply? Or how do we push them to figure out those numbers?
Joy, if we have a pocket that we know of that needs connectivity, we can target that and go after it. And the way we do that is we start now and we reach out to a provider that's willing to go to that pocket. We get pricing for them, and then we file the 471 come July 29 or June 29, because they are waiving the requirement to do the bidding. They're waiving the 28-day waiting period. They're waiving all this stuff. So we put together our get pricing. reach out to providers, get some pricing. They open the 471 window and we file it. And they're supposed to be putting money out within 30 days of closing the window. So the window is going to be open for 45 days. And then 30 days after it closes, they're supposed to be paying this money out.
Hi, Mylon. Just for my own education, do we know some of those areas that do not have coverage, or is there a map? Who tracks that information so we can be a little bit more targeted with some outreach?
Mauricio, that's been a problem that we've always had. We can't use the FCC maps because the FCC maps go by census blocks, and they're very, very inaccurate. And the FCC even admits they're inaccurate. NTIA right now is working with our broadband office, Jeff, and we're all working together to put together some accurate maps, but it's in process. We don't have them yet. And I've said for years that you can't fix a problem unless you can accurately identify the problem. And once you identify it, now it's measurable and you can deal with it. So we do not have accurate maps, and it comes more from people and what I know in my head driving around where we do not have access. And our county school superintendents are huge when it comes to knowing where we have access and where we don't. And some of our consultants like John Kelly, John deals with remote areas, and Karen Ziegler deals with the remote areas. And those people know where we are lacking connectivity in remote areas. So it's people's knowledge today is the only way we're getting the info.
And let me just note on the mapping that the NTIA has just released a version of what has been proprietary that 37 states as state broadband people have been able to get at, a new public map with all sorts of demographic overlays. And it is quite useful, though, as Mylon indicated, it's still based on the traditional census block reporting that is evolving to be much more specific down at the household level, but that may yet take a while. Jeff, I think, is working on that, getting that link in the chat, if you would.
Hey, quick question, Mylon. I think you're on righteous ground here with the rules about the served and unserved and underserved and all that. Just for clarification, that the example you gave about satellite, that was illustrative, right? It's not just satellite, it's dial up, it's bad hotspot, it's the whole range of things. So, I mean, you were very crystal clear about inadequate satellite, and I get that, but if our friend Steve Hill was on the call, I think he would immediately pop up and say, yeah, there's good satellite coming, there's improvements coming all the time. That certainly satellite is part of the set of options that have to be available, but bad satellite shouldn't count as a barrier to getting this available. Is that a fair restatement of what your point was?
Very fair. Yeah, I specified geosynchronous because geosynchronous is great for data. And thank you, John, because a lot of people don't know the difference in geosynchronous and LEO. So yeah, geosynchronous is a 22,500 miles away satellite, stays in one place, and it's one satellite to serve the whole country.
Right.
And the satellites we're putting up today are the low orbit satellites. We call them LEO. They're low orbit satellites, and it takes a constellation of them, thousands of them, to cover the Earth because they are closer to the Earth and they're constantly moving, orbiting the Earth. So that's what they're putting up today. We did that 30 years ago with the Iridium satellite project. It failed because it cost money to put those satellites up because they're always in a decaying orbit. So you're constantly having to replace them. Today, there's a lot more money put into low orbit satellite technology. The feds are putting in millions of dollars into it. So, maybe it'll work this time. I'm hoping.
Thank you.
Hey, let me flip to telehealth. I did neglect Janet and possibly Jeff if he had additional input as I flipped around the agenda to accommodate Derek and Sophia. My apologies, Janet. You're up, please.
He's on mute.
Janet Major.
Oh, Janet, you're on mute.
There you go. Thank you.
On mute? Can you hear me now?
Yes, thank you.
Classic, can you hear me now? Thank you so much. A couple of things I wanted to share that are relevant for this group. Last week, Jeff and I both had the opportunity to attend the Rural Health Conference, and he gave a great presentation along with Kimber. There was an excellent presentation by Amanda Aguirre, who's a good friend and colleague at the Border Health Office in Yuma. It was great to hear that she has written a DLT grant. It was excellent to network with everyone. Cindy Hogan helped me put together some really great packets, and I was able to give a stack of the PDF sheet on EBB information in Spanish to Amanda Aguirre, as well as the packets that we put together, which are 1 page in English, 1 page in Spanish of the overview, the info sheet. And then the 3rd page is the list of things that you need to bring and be willing to provide with your application. And one thing I found out is that no one has heard of FCC EBB. Now, this is my community. I felt like a used car saleswoman. And, you know, these are the people who work with the people who need to know. So Amanda Aguirre is very excited. They reach out to people through the SNAP program, through the schools, through Medicaid. My focus is going to continue to be to share these beautiful packets with people in clinics so that they can share them with the people that they serve. So another solution is we're putting together an office hours, which is a great format that we've put together that will have a panel of experts, and Tracy Beal has consented to help me pull this together. And we'll have a panel of experts that will share content and then do Q&A. And the target market will be the clinics that my mailing list is all people in healthcare from entry level to highly specialized. So everybody's going to be welcome, but my goal in life is to share this information with the healthcare community, to share with the people that they serve. I don't know what another solution. I'm so excited and proud of us. We're number 9, right? To be in the top 10 for anything, especially something good. So we're number 9, and we want to be, we should all be very, very proud of that, especially within this group. But I'm wondering if we should also be looking at things like public service announcements on radio and TV. We get a lot of mileage on our target market, which is NPR. But, you know, TV stations and radio stations are required to do public service announcements. And I'm wondering if that might be something that we should investigate in terms of trying to get the word out, because people I found do not know. And thank you so much, Cindy, for helping me with those packets. It really was very useful. And it was great to be able to talk to folks about that.
Any telehealth related questions or comments for Janet? I know Jeff did just have to drop off. So anything further there? Janet, thank you. I do want to highlight a couple of things that went into the chat and then open it for some general discussion. We did post the link to the brand new federal grant monies guide, and that's cross-jurisdictional, cross-departmental. So it came out from the NTIA Broadband USA program. It's a great guide with like a page and a half on each of the major grant broadband opportunities at USDA, EDA, NTIA, FCC, USAC. They're all summarized in that fresh guide.
Where is that, Mark?
Jeff posted it somewhere in that chat.
Okay, it's the one that got posted earlier.
Scroll back, but also Orison Henry will completely capture the chat and publish it this afternoon with all those live links. And then the other thing I mentioned verbally, Jeff did post, was the brand new NTIA map, which is a minor redaction of the version they developed for state insiders, executive branch insiders. 37 states have aligned and can use the more extensive version. The only redactions are some licensing of data sources that they could get for a limited audience versus a public audience. But it is a great new variant on the map. It harkens back to what we did with the land department 8 to 10 years ago, where we had on the Arizona ArcGIS site overlays of community anchor institutions, which still aren't on this new map and should be, another topic, but with all sorts of demographic information. What are the community demographics around the areas overlaid with the broadband information. And then I posted a little paragraph about a new bipartisan Senate bill for $40 billion in state-directed broadband monies. And this is what we call block grants. And last time I looked at a $10 billion version of that, it was based on a baseline for the state plus a population percentage. And out of 10 billion, Arizona penciled out to be just over 200 million in state block grants for broadband. So at 40 billion, you're likely in a $500 to $800 million range of Arizona money at the executive branch. Will that package move? I don't know. But there actually has been good movement. Just last week, Congress, and a lot of people didn't see it, approved and the president signed off on $255 billion for basically competitive research in the US, compete with China on AI and in software and all sorts of semiconductors. And so those kind of stay under the radar a little in the public view because they're a little bit boutique, but certainly either a standalone package like this $40 billion broadband infrastructure one, and or things like it reflected in the larger infrastructure package are going to happen. And so, you know, we think Jeff is going to get $10 to $100 million out of existing money. But the opportunity, as Jeff alluded to, this is a once a decade, once every 2 decade window. And that's the kind of money that could be flowing from these infrastructure congressional efforts. Even in these difficult times, there's now some alignment about a $1.2 billion infrastructure, as $1 trillion. I get my M's, B's, and T's confused, pardon me sometimes. So anyway, I just wanted to make that point that as good as the money already committed and flowing is, there's still a big upside, a shoe to drop on block grant kind of money that will really be discretionary at the state executive branch level. So let me just open it up. We have about 7 minutes on the clock. For our normal time, we'll go over if the conversation allows. Tracy, you've raised your hand.
Yeah, thank you so much. Wes and I are working together because we have a donor who is giving 365 computers to rural school districts. And we are looking for a place, a location, a warehouse that would be temperature controlled where we could deliver those computers so that from that location, we could then get them to rural school districts. So Wes and I have already reached out to, Steve Watson, have not heard back yet, but just trying to figure that out. I don't have that space. Wes doesn't have that space. So if anybody
how long do you need the space?
About a week to 2 weeks. Just long enough to get them there and then to keep them temperature controlled so we can get them to those places.
Hey, Tracy, this is Karen Hewitt. We have a warehouse. Vector USA has a warehouse, and that would be something we absolutely should be able to help you with as well if Mylan Solutions not available.
Excellent.
Awesome.
Okay.
Mylan, what were you thinking, Mylan?
We have a call at 4 o'clock today, right, Tracy?
We do. Yeah.
Okay, so by 4 o'clock, I'll know if I'll see if I can receive them at Department of Education and store them there for 2 weeks while you distribute them. Okay.
Okay.
And
awesome.
I asked Kate Wright about that. She said there was a possibility, but that's not the kind of thing I don't think she deals with all the time. So you're much better positioned to know where that stuff could go.
yeah, I'll skip her, go to facilities.
So that's what I was saying. And Brother Watson may solve the whole problem by finally returning my phone call before noon and saying yes or no.
I don't think Steve has any space there. He only has
Yeah.
office space at down there on Central, so.
Yeah, my only theory was that he's got probably the nicest office of all of county soups, and thought, well, maybe he's got a place where we could store these.
I'll find out, Tracy, from our facilities folks, and I'll let you know by
Thanks.
4 o'clock today.
And I think we actually are meeting at 1. So you actually have a shorter window.
Is it 1? Oh, well, that's okay.
Okay.
That works.
Sounds
By
good.
1 then.
Thanks, guys.
Have to
Sure
call
appreciate the help.
Tracy,
We have
that's
Karen-
great.
We have Karen as a backup though. So
Love
Karen-
it, love it when we can help broker some connections and assistance here.
Thank you, Mylan.
Anyone else have input or comments or questions for the good of the order?
Hi, this is Paul Ross at Phoenix College. I dropped into the chat that we have a presentation that we're making to the City of Phoenix Workforce and Economic Subcommittee this week. That's going to be quite an interesting presentation. So if you do have time, tune in for the update on our project, but significant update.
Thank you. And was there a link? I didn't see it flow by.
Yes, there was a link in the chat early.
Great.
Early on.
And again, that'll appear in the minutes later today. Anyone else? Okay, well, we want to keep Steve in our thoughts. Hopefully just a minor, incident quickly recovered from that we can hope on that. We'll somehow keep you updated on that. I hope my stand-in wasn't, I know I jammed up the agenda in a few ways. I did put a link to our news and events page. Looks like that's about a week old, but the June 16th version does recap many of the upcoming events. Paul, that's a kind of thing when Steve has a chance. Well, it's going to be too late for that one, but you can always feed upcoming events like that to Steve in advance and get them up on our news and resources page for those announcements.
Hey, Mark,
So,
Mark, this is Karen. Are you going to substitute while Steve is on vacation?
Yeah, I think between you and I, we'll just keep the meetings going. See, I had my trial by fire this morning, and I have now the credentials and know how to appear as Steve. I may get him to co-authorize me and/or you, so we appear as ourselves when we do this. Thank you, Karen, for reminding us. Yes. Well, good. I'll call it to an end, but I'm going to leave it open until I hear from Henry and Oris, at least that they've captured the chat and any final conversations you want to have with the people remaining. But I'll call the meeting closed, and thank you all. And again, Stephen, our thoughts and prayers. Thank you.
Thanks, Mark.
Good job, Mark.
Yeah, I've got the chat, Mark. This is Oris.
Good.
We're a sensational, inspirational team. Cheers, everyone.
Okay, then I think I will, as they dropping off here, actually stop the recording.
Good job, Steve 2.0.